All right. So, a couple of weeks ago, Elon kicked off a pretty fierce debate online talking about mail in ballots and designing a system that would make it impossible to deal with fraud. So we're in the moment of election season, and voter integrity is actually a huge deal. And one of the ways that we could ensure that uh, there was zero doubt is having something that was immutable and completely transparent. Well, guess what? It's called blockchain, and it already exists. And you have companies like Constellation Network that are already deeply involved in all aspects of the federal level. And as I pointed out to Elon the other day in this post, is Constellation already has a solution that's on GitHub right now. And I provided a link and I provided a lot of proof of them actually working with the federal government. Uh, and that's what we're kind of going to explore here today. And with me is Tabalo. So Tabalo, for those who don't know, is an Oracle architect. And on top of that, he's actually a president of a city DAO in Fort Worth, Texas. And he's actually involved with the National DigiFoundry. So uh, please uh, tell us a little bit more about who you are and how you're exploring all of these possibilities on chain.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Dagnum, and excited to be here and help educate the audience. A little bit about my background. So I come from a solution architect, IT, web developer background. So I've been doing kind of cloud native work, cloud infrastructure, and networking within the Oracle lens. Today we're going to focus more on kind of this idea of on-chain organizations and kind of how digital identities and digital votings are evolving within the information age. I'll focus in more kind of the vision where that's evolving with Fort Worth DAO and how we hopefully are looking to define national, state, national, and global standards and kind of how we envision governance in this way. Um, I want to give a quick shout out to at least Graham Novak. This concept of on-chain organizations is kind of a good meta concept to think about all these governance and transparent apparatuses and protocols you can use for kind of this new age of organizations and more digital based infrastructure and governance. So one thing we're growing on and we're actually starting the steps on is within Fort Worth DAO is we're thinking of a white paper of if you had a city or municipality fully on chain, what would be a white paper that would set up the not only constitutional and guiding heuristics of it, similar to the U.S. Um, and in similar constituting documents, but how would that be sort of a code is law type of architecture that abides by zero trust principles. It promotes sovereign computing, and then also has this kind of resilience aspect for disaster recovery and failover and availability in a cyber and infrastructure type of way. So you have to think about the type of roles and leadership and the governance you have to have for those board and governing members. Your city councils today, or even your elected officials today, usually, they're elected on a democratic pretense, or usually it's basically a large popularity contest. But it's not commonly thought that they need to have cyber capabilities with them. So as we kind of dig into this digital identity and digital voting, and even just crypto and digital asset management or Web3 operations, it becomes more imperative these type of like knowing key management, device management, backing up recovery keys offline, knowing kind of operational security in this kind of internet realm. And that kind of pretext is something we're hoping to define out as we evolve and really kind of put pen to paper on how would we really think about these type of a white paper of a city DAO, at least in Fort Worth's context. So if you can see my screen, the main thing we're showing here is there's this taxonomy put together by a gentleman named Jonathan Hillis. I think this is a simple way. There's a lot going on here for you to read, and I don't want you to get too distracted with it, but just use this as a reference that you can see there's all different types of organizations coming together. I mean, you could think of it like startup cities where it's like in real life coming together, and there might be a social, community, or cultural order. Like with Fort Worth DAO, we're coming more of education, and they would kind of organize, mobilize, and vote on that mission. There's also this kind of network society, network state concept that comes out of from Balaji Srinivasan and that growing school of thought, where it could be like just an on-chain community, even social and fraternal orders can be more networks at large, or even like micronations. Like I was just recently kind of studying a bit of Liberland, which is a very interesting concept that's actually has a decent amount of maturity to it. So kind of with this said, the concept of voting and election security is a very hot subject. Election security in national security terms is number one, and it's even above water and energy security, which might make you scratch your head a little bit because you probably need water more than you might need a vote. But that's as I understand, it's a top priority in national security terms. So you have to think about this in electronic voting, digital voting. Do you want just purely old school count paper rocks? I'm not going to dig into which is better. I think there is merit to say digital and electronic based voting does expand the attack surface, but we're going to focus on digital voting and how digital identity and these voting systems are evolving. So as we go into the information age, these digital voting, these digital organizations, these network states, DAOs, on-chain organizations, we're bullish on, and we're seeing this as an overarching trend, is it lowers the barrier to entry to run an organization, and then it creates a larger toolkit that you can use. So now when you kind of like dig into this, you think about one, you have to notarize and validate the identity. So there's decentralized identity. And then you have to think about notarizing the vote. So there's certainly strong use cases to expand within, like the examples in the Euclid SDK, that Dagnum that you tweeted about, how like existing Constellation infrastructure can be used for polling, and those metagraphs and transactions of polling can expand with the existing kind of federal space. And then even beyond that, how this would transcend with new types of devices and hardware and IoT, and this kind of expanding Panasonic relationship they're having as well. So I'm not sure where you want to kind of take it from here, but there's a lot of different elements we can dig into, and whether we want to talk about the digital organizations or specifically the solution here.
Yeah. So here's the Metagraph example that he was just referring to. That's already live on the Constellation's public repo. So it's here for anybody to use and anybody to implement. And so for somebody as yourself that has background and knowledge from like an engineering standpoint, like how could this specific example right here that's on their public repo, like how could your city DAO in Fort Worth, Texas utilize this template that's already up?
Yeah, I mean I do think there's a lot more battle testing we need. I understand this has been used with Lattice.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, the way to think about it is, or at least the way I'd envision it, and if you can kind of switch to my screen, I can kind of show you a little bit of a visualization. Because the way I'm thinking about this systemically and organizationally, I don't want to get too caught in the solution or the function, but you can kind of see where it might play in. But ultimately, this kind of piece right here, I don't know if my mouse is showing, but this voting contracts, this is where you would think about the interoperability of leveraging this type of solution for proposals and governance. Now, a common one that's used right in the marketplace is Aragon. There's Snapshot. There's like Charmverse. So the way you could envision it for us is if we actually scale to the transaction point where we're doing amount of proposals and transactions, that function and that service could be based on that sort of example kit. Now, the thing is a lot of voting, they kind of initialize a lot of smart contract automation, because there could be one sort of the simple tally, and then, okay, that's to go forward. You log it. A big thing with the on-chain organizations that once that's logged, metagraphed, then you display transparency, the transparency of it, and then that's sort of the go forward action, because you might be voting on allocation of resources. You may be voting on committee chairs or leadership roles. And yeah, so that kind of system of record or system of evidence is how you adopt it. But I do think it's important for us as a community to think that we need to think of this in a very holistic way, and how we go in and out of other ecosystems, because there's a lot of proven technologies for DAOs. So kind of as we go more into this space, we have to be competitive. So and metagraphing, this would work at scale. So, and even you could think of it even more if it's like IoT or machine to machine. There might be a certain level of consensus that has to occur. You may not call that exactly voting, like human democracy voting, but the machines might have to find consensus among themselves, and that audit trail and provenance of the machine transactions communicating. You could think of it in that way if you had you have to have edge smart decisions.
Yeah, no, I mean, you bring up an interesting point there, because when most people think of voting, they think of it in the traditional sense, right? But voting goes beyond that, and that's another thing where Constellation actually excels at, is validating data at the source, and it's something that they can actually do at scale. And this machine to machine communication that you're specifically talking about. So let me see if hold on, just make sure. I don't know if we switched.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna switch screens here, and I'm gonna show. So I'm at the National DigiFoundries website. They're also a DAO. So everything that we've been talking about so far is applicable to the discussion. And maybe you can, since you're in this, maybe you can shed some light also about how that structure works, and what all is involved in the voting. But to get back to the machine-to-machine communication, because that's another type of voting, one of the use cases is this space working group. And that is actually something that they're working out right now. And, again, I like to point out that this is not an Ethereum address. It's not a Bitcoin address. It's not even a Solana address. This right here is a Constellation DAG address. So this whole working group, the United States Space Force, the Defense Innovation Unit, NASA, the International Space Station, all of these people are using Metagraph technology right now. And you can see in here some of the things that they're working on and testing is with these AI models, training them and enhanced GPS accuracy, but also automation in space, and that goes back to this machine-to-machine communication that Tabalo was talking about.
Yeah, yeah. So within the space front, there's a rising commercial um, security requirement. Obviously, there's global competition between China and the U.S. and a part of certain regions of the globe, but this kind of space traffic control is a big area that it's going beyond just sort of military applications or NASA-based applications, but kind of more in the commercial private sector. You could think of SpaceX, Blue Origin, etc. And the machine-to-machine communication is you have the rising trend that's happening is, and this kind of aligns with the GPU and AI and kind of forward edge and preventing the GPS spoofing, is they need that signals edge inference. So there might be machine to machine communication, and then you have to be as close to those machines, and at that edge there has to be an inference system um, that's making these decisions in real time. One is safety and risk management, so like kind of GPS tracking and making sure there's nothing colliding and we don't they don't put it like kind of a space doom debris loop. But another is sort of coordination and tracking as this kind of rising area of space logistics, and even with Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, that's kind of the grandiose ambition is, you'd have to think about the cargo, for space-based logistics, the like with the Falcon 9 rockets and their abilities, they can carry some decent cargo. So the strategic nature of this is very front line. It's very innovative, and kind of what you're pointing out here is a lot of the way us at the NDF we're using the DAG Stargazer wallet is you're sort of issued tokens, and then the tokens you use to sort of as your participation into the work group. So you send the tokens to signal your involvement with the work group. And then that, a lot of that is built on sort of IBM and Microsoft cloud infrastructure on the back end of it.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull up. So here's while I look for the other stuff that I've actually talked about. This commercial satellite operations. I can point out this here post from Benjamin Diggles, and this talks about how they're actually using the hypergraph on a federal level for sending information requests. So it goes beyond like what actually people think of. So the way that this could be used potentially in the future is on a federal level. Anything that needed to be notarized would be done in a secure and transparent way. And how you would do that is by using the hypergraph. And the hypergraph is already a federally approved chain. They got approval, I think, last year. And so that's a big deal, And there's all kinds of, I don't know how many notarizations happen on a day-to-day basis between different federal entities. But, you could have the Department of Treasury needing to send stuff to the Department of Defense. You could, it goes out, almost infinitely, the different ways that this could be used.
Yeah, the from the defense and national security realm, this kind of threat vector of GPS spoofing, I know, is of top priority. And as you're signaling, this kind of data assurance is a big area of, okay, we can move data, we can store data, we can analyze data, we can infer data, but in these kind of huge spaghetti monsters that become all these network transactions and packet movements, at least with those critical transactions or critical information sharing in the metadata that has to transmit either across department or cross agency or public private, um, there's a kind of this growing need on this auditability of it. So yeah, this type of infrastructure, it does take a bit to kind of wrap your mind around. And like, I think at least kind of the part you're showing here
Yeah. So
is,
so I found I found the post. It's kind of hard. And we were talking about this earlier before we found the stream. Like I've got to create like a better folder because I've posted about this stuff, literally thousands of times. But this one goes specifically about the enterprise adoption and use of space infrastructure and how the government is actually relying on public network for its overall broader space security model. So
yeah,
last year, the Space Development Agency started sending up these satellites in these different layers, and you can see here all the different people that are part of these different layers. You have Northrop Grumman, you've got York, L3 Harris. I mean, there's a bunch of people involved here, and actually Northrop Grumman already has a roundabout relationship with Constellation because they're part of Space ISAC.
yeah, I mean, you have to, the way I think about this, because there's a lot of planning about, at least, obviously terrestrial supply chain planning. So it's very likely that in the, as we keep going on into this century in this kind of information age, a city's token or a supply chain's token, it's not going to be just one token, one city. It's going to be one to infinite tokens, and where this kind of, the direct acrylic graph of a DAG and this type of visualization of metagraphing to one to many and certain level of scoping of it for security reasons or need to know reasons is going to be a huge area. So a supply chain for, let's say, Fort Worth, obviously, you could see Lockheed in there and sort of the supply chain components that come into here, but even Texas at large, cross border, you could think of avocados, but more importantly, like semiconductors, and those kind of chip building capacities. There's critical security and assurance that has to be maintained there. So, I know that's kind of the leading and strong use case with Constellation and metagraphing, and that's a big reason they've had such a strong buy-in from Space Force and DoD and the Air Force. But yeah, this other area, when you kind of think about how do we maintain integrity in democracy or in an election or just even simple voting, and this really does it does kind of it needs to really open the conversation to constituents at large to really understand how voting operates. Because if you think about it, like with a mail-in voting system or mail-in ballot, I mean, there's a lot of states you don't have to like really verify who you are, so that there's like this notarization of like voting is a very basic security element of democracy. And like in Europe, it's a no-brainer. It's kind of interesting how over here it's it's such a contiguous point.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that you mentioned that because I mean, not to get too digress too much into the political arena, but what you just mentioned is one thing that I've always found kind of hilarious. When you even bring up voter integrity or voter ID, uh, you talk about basically any other country on the planet, and there is very strict voter ID laws. Here in America, for example, just walk down to Mexico. Uh, Mexico has voter ID. You can't vote in a Mexican election without showing proof that you have your voter ID. So I don't understand why that's such a no subject here, and why
or
people.
opening a bank account. I mean,
Yeah,
there's a lot of very there's a lot of very basic things,
yeah, but
you
if you
know.
even talk about that or even suggest that here in this country, it like yeah, and I don't know how we walk past that and how we explain that integrity of your vote is a big deal, right?
It kind
And
of makes me think of I don't know if there's any South Park fans in the audience, but it's like Stan Marshall's like, we need some integrity. But yeah, no, I mean the notarization. I mean, seriously though, like if you have, there's no reason that we shouldn't have this validation and verification of voting. And at least for us in the city DAO, like a lot of our interest is to protect and serve and and grow Fort Worth, in the
yeah,
community here, and
uh,
educate our workforce. And we're not and for that reason we need to know, like, hey, you're a Texan or you have some Fort Worth tethering. It's not just, hey, you're in North Korea and you can just join, kind of thing. So
yeah, maybe bring up some of that, like your City DAO website, because I touched about on that a little bit in a video a couple of months ago. I think when somebody found your LinkedIn post, and then everybody went like bananas. It's like, what? These guys are interested in the hypergraph, and that's how I got connected with you. Actually, is somebody from the community uh, said, "Hey, you should look at what these guys just posted on LinkedIn."
yeah, so I mean, this is our site. It's a pretty simple site. We're having a lot more refinement of the onboarding and joining process, and having the necessary KYC to validate, um, their Texan or a community member, an actual community member. Because again, we're more tethered in real life. We're not. If I go back to that diagram, like we're very locally oriented. We want to have people here connecting, networking, and we focus on Web3. So we don't prefer one chain or the other. We kind of include them all, and then we try to give our honest and earnest assessment of what makes sense for what. And even me, I've been in sort of Bitcoin and Web3 since kind of about 2017 or so, and it was very apparent to me that after talking with Mason Lanal and the ATX DAO, which is kind of the gold standard, at least within the United States, that this is definitely not only a strategic area, but it's highly important because it's critical. We're educated not only from a workforce, but filling educational gaps where people aren't getting the proper training or awareness of digital assets, or even on the back end, the IT and cyber skills required to manage, govern, secure, or build them just entrepreneurially. Um, so yeah, but yeah, here's our site here. I mean, we have our kind of vision and roadmap. We have a constitution. This kind of where we pride ourselves here is our constitution. But yeah, I have kind of a white paper site I'm working on, and then we have some kind of big overhauls where we'll have automated the process of signing up. And here you can see some of our partners.
Oh,
Um,
Simba.
yeah, so Simba, yeah, the Jasser Akuli, he's a good dude, and he's ahead of the product there, and yeah, figuring out the right, because they lead a lot of the smart contract automation and developer platforms there. So even with the Iron Spider kit, like that was kind of a big area of us. So yeah, this kind of, you can kind of get an idea who we're working with, and then we have resources here. So uh, it's not only just about us, but it's about how do we grow the community at large. So being a developer is a big one. like how to do investigations, operational security. I just added some new resources on like people that might want to be AI developers. So we kind of use this Web3 as an overarching like convergence area, but our main mandate is educating and thought leadership. So we're holding a workshop next week on July 17th at 12 to 2. I mean, click on our events here and you'll find it. So yeah, Dennis and I are doing this, and one thing I do want to give major kudos to co-founder Dennis here, because when it goes back to this voting and governance and organizational element, one thing he's really spearheading that really made us join forces is he's working on how you do Robert's Rules of Order, which for those of you who don't know, that's sort of the governing document. It's about 600 pages of protocols and logic of what has essentially ran Western institutions. So Robert's Rules of Order is a common parliamentary proceeding and a way that organizations are ran, and we want to be able to be the first city DAO. If not, it's already done somewhere we don't know, but really show like, hey, you can run a DAO just like you run a government, and that specific like code is law of that is like a key area of us. Now, obviously, there's a lot of testing and innovation and occurring that has to happen, but yeah, that's a big area. So like you could think about, where you would vote. So you have voting technologies in which, you can see the Metagraph toolkit in the Constellation GitHub repo, and then you'd archive that, and then that would essentially, you could, voting for chaired positions and leadership positions and stuff like that. So
yeah, and to kind of piggyback off of what you're saying, like that, this could be a multi-chain approach. I mean, that's exactly what they did with Iron Spider. So this image that I'm showing is it's now this blockchain universal toolkit that they provided to the federal government has been rebranded to Iron Spider. I don't have the new slide, but this is essentially what it is. And you can see that there's multiple people involved here. I mean, CGI has a blockchain component. Obviously, Constellation down here has a blockchain component. And as you pointed out and shared with people, that part of your city DAO is implementing, Simba with their smart contracts. Kinemi also has a blockchain component. They are handling the decentralized storage aspect of this secure information sharing. So this isn't, like one chain is going to rule everything. And, it's why I've been trying to explore different Web3 communities, and how everything can work together. One of them is Dfinity, Internet Computer, ICP. They have this marvelous technology. Their smart contracts are called canisters, and you can actually store tons of data on these canisters. So, having this multi-chain approach to something like
yeah, we have a couple folks involved with ICP pretty deeply, and that's where we're trying to accelerate. They have like it's like they're running Postgres on a canister, so you could have like kind of that storage element there. You instead of Konami, it could be like an ICP way. One thing we've kind of made clear is that we're trying to think of like, okay, read access and direct access to the data, having it kind of like geolocated, like you have to be in Texas, but it could be backed up globally, but it's only accessible in Texas. These are the kind of things we're thinking about. One of them is like a continuity sense, a disaster planning sense, but obviously kind of a security sense.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the things that's really only possible on chain, and it's one of the reasons I mean, it's not the only reason, but it's one of the reasons why the Department of Defense specifically was interested in constellations technology with this, data assurance. And they can stamp and validate and notarize data at the source in real time. So they'll know if like a node or some sort of threat vector was trying to access the network from outside its approved thing, right? But that same level of stuff can be used in different use cases, like the one that you just pointed out, right? So you don't, on a city DAO level, you don't want somebody like me that doesn't even live in Fort Worth, Texas, to have some sort of say on what goes on in Fort Worth, Texas. I mean, I could, with my online identity, like I could claim that I live in Fort Worth, Texas, but I mean, how do you know that I actually live in Fort Worth, Texas?
Yeah. Yeah, and this is kind of where the zero knowledge proof comes in, and this has been a big area that I learned a lot. There's a gentleman involved with the Texas Blockchain Council on the Provenance chain, and his co-founders with the National Defense University, and as is kind of how I was making sure I was getting up to speed on a lot of the supply chain protocols needed, and it's called c-star.io. But that's exactly the idea. It's like essentially you could have a browser plugin or even like a camera based way, and it's like when you verify someone's like address on like a bill or their ID, like you don't need to store all that information. Like you arguably don't even need to know their name. You just need to know like if you buy alcohol, really that person, all they need to know is you're greater than 21 years, right? Like they arguably don't need to know your driver's license. They don't need to know any of the other information on there. So that very scoped information kind of green light, red light element is a big part that's coming in these supply chain security questions. And really a lot of the thought leadership that's come out of this came out of the West Coast and some of these West Coast blockchain organizations that work with Nike, because they were trying to verify that Uyghur labor wasn't used with Nike shoes. Like say you get a box of shoes, or in our case in Texas, you could think of, avocados, or even a drone. A drone is like where it gets really serious, like a DJI drone. But it's not just the shoes. It's like every small component of that. And not only that component, but that value chain from all the way back to its like raw commodity.
Yeah, and to get off this screen, that maybe you can expand, since you're in the the NDF. You can talk about how this voting actually works. I mean, that's the other thing, is a lot of people want to know, like, when is all of this stuff going to happen? Well, all of this stuff already is happening, and it's pretty remarkable that you have a lot of key players that are using blockchain right now in this way. I mean, you've got the Department of Treasury, you've got the Space Force, you have all these big key players actually using and implementing this technology right now. But to kind of go to what you were talking about as a zero knowledge proof and verification, that's actually what they did with the Door Metagraph Explorer. So a lot of people don't really understand, like, why this actually was such a huge deal. So for those who don't know, the Door Metagraph is Constellation's sensor that's on chain, and it takes location data and it anonymizes this data, and then it validates it on the global ledger. So, it doesn't know that, like, my door node is, like, none of that information about Dagnum's house is on chain. All it's doing is verifying, that I have this device and that there is a check-in, but nobody knows that thing is tied to my address. But the overall like location data, it's all anonymized, but how that's important to big key players is like city planners would like to know like how many people within a certain demographic are in an area, or even maybe like a store. Maybe you're thinking about opening up a store and you want to know like how many people between the age of like 18 and 35 live in this region, right? And so location data is big business. I mean, it's literally like billions of dollars, and it's why Snowflake and Foursquare even exist. But this just goes back to what you were talking about with the zero knowledge proofs, right? So like, here's a check-in. This is all live. This was done a couple seconds ago. So this is the device ID, and here's the reward address. So you get a reward for just participating in the network. But none of this data is publicly available. So it doesn't know anything about this user because all of that stuff is anonymized.
Yeah, this specific kind of solution it has a lot of strong momentum with kind of these retail enterprises and organizations. But yeah, I mean, you could think how this like transcends, because at least I know the word they made up for is like a datapreneur, but there is certainly a need for products and services to like be thought from the data up and kind of a data catalog governance up, and even like as a sovereign individual, as we would think in like a city DAO way, that you can opt in or out of the information sharing, and then if you do opt in, you get the proper rewards to do so. And I think what'll be interesting is when you think of like kind of the ad tech world, and how you get ads on your devices. It'll be interesting to see what type of DApps or type of solutions that bring this kind of datapreneur concept. But yeah, certainly more robust. The way people think about how they interact and give their data is a key element, and having this data accessible in a zero knowledge architecture, to me, that's a pretty leading future area that I hope we get to sooner than later. I know that'll take a lot of time.
Well, even like
yeah.
voter participation, right? So voter participation, at least in the United States, is pretty low. I mean, so you could even incentivize people to participate with tokens. I mean, there's tons of different ways that you could do it. But I think the key takeaway is like having it be like a trusted system. And that, at least in Constellation's term, right? I mean, the fact that it's already been validated as a secure, scalable solution by the Department of Defense. I mean, I think that speaks volumes about the potential application for just any Joe Blow, or a city DAO like you, or a small to medium-sized business, or even a large enterprise like Panasonic. That was a pretty big announcement the other day, that Panasonic is not only partnering the hackathon that's coming up in 2 days, but they're actually exploring the use of Panasonic's products with this Metagraph technology. I know that you're down in Texas, and there's Panasonic products that are already being used and implemented in the field right now on a city and state level.
Yeah, Panasonic, their Toughbooks, and a variety of different products they sell, it's a lot of hardware So, I mean, you could think about, again, back to that industrial IoT or just machine to machine based services, or even just enhanced chain of custody and things like that, is where you could certainly see these type of solutions come in. One thing I'd point out, and at least for maybe folks that may be new to Web3, is with Bitcoin and Ethereum, and I love Bitcoin, so I make that clear. But there's like this there's trustless and then there's trusted. The trustless element with Bitcoin and arguably even Ethereum, although the Ethereum's up for debate because they have had some like rollbacks and stuff. But the trustless element means like all you have to trust that it's just the code and then the network uptime. So it's not trusted and said that they can say, we don't trust you, you can't participate. So everyone can participate. And that founding principle is a very key element of Bitcoin and its trustless nature on how much the industry has grown at large for within the digital asset space. So I want to make that clear. Now, when we talk about trusted, and particularly when how you see Constellation and within organizations such as the government or a critical enterprise, that they have to have very trusted perimeters with the organization about who's in or out, is a very key part. So I did want to kind of make that delineation, but like you do have to think, if you're trying to protect or have a perimeter, you do have to have a circle of trust, and that circle of trust, beyond that, what is trusted, you wouldn't want in, right? And just kind of as Dagnan was pointing earlier, it's like we don't want, anyone that has no actual legitimate vested interest or kind of care for Fort Worth to participate in the Fort Worth DAO. Now, we're not exactly trustless about it, but that general concept is I put that in your mind about the way you interact with these technologies.
Yeah. And getting back to the voting and how on-chain voting works, and how sort of expand a little bit further, since you're in the National DigiFoundry, maybe like walk us through this slide right here.
Yeah, so I mean, the National DigiFoundry is a very broad organization, and I commend Kevin Jackson and Eric Adolph's leadership that kind of spawned it with a lot of their work stream and their cyber success, with Forward Edge as well, and these institutional partners. So there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of different working groups. There's like decentralized science, space working group, secure information sharing, financial asset tokenization, which is led by Court and Trana. But like what you're seeing here is, so as the organization scales, these are visualizations that are showing you the operational model, and a way that the way it's currently rolled out is a lot of the NDF is actually a DAG based token. So it's on Integration Net, and they issue tokens, and then you use those tokens to allot to that working group. So yeah, I mean, this is happening now. There is literally, U.S. Treasury participants and space participants that are on board this system. So, I think a lot of the times we deal with, and maybe within the DAG and Constellation community, they're well aware of this ecosystem, but there's a lot of folks that I interface with that they don't understand that even within the government, there's a lot of championing for Web3s and DAOs as a just a more efficient operational model and having these digital tooling. So
yeah, I mean, it's pretty funny to me when I see stuff talking online about like, when are we going to use it? When is the government going to be pro blockchain? And it's like, bro, They're already pro blockchain. They're literally using it right now. Like there's somebody at the National Treasury Department and somebody at the National Science Foundation that has a Stargazer wallet. Like that's pretty mind blowing to me.
Yeah, I feel like government's kind of one of those monolithic words that we have to be careful how we use it, because one end of the government and the other end of the government, or even inner department, would have differing opinions. I've seen a lot, like when I was at DC Blockchain Week, where it's like you would have like FinCEN guys, which a lot of these are like the anti-money laundering investigators and on-chain analysts, and they're like pro Web3 crypto, and they're very strong allies. But then you kind of really, with the only thing you get in the press, at least in the mainstream press, is you'll see kind of the SEC just kind of overhauling jurisdiction of a token's a security, and digital art is somehow a security or something. So it's very interesting, because if you ask within the like Treasury Department, and where in the Treasury Department, you'll get different answers, and even in the military as well. But it's very for people who are very aware of this type of the value and power it has. It's a very multi-front value add that Web3 has had. Um, it workforce development, educational development, like cyber resilience. I remember pointing out to the Lee in the Texas Blockchain Council that if you looked at the national cyber strategy that came out about a month or two ago, it's totally an opposite of what the SEC is doing. So it's just these type of things, you just have to really understand, and just kind of not get so polarized with it. But this innovation is critical.
Yeah, and I've got up the Digital Chamber, which is some other people that are forward thinking and trying to press through digital adoption of blockchain, because a lot of people, like you said, especially the SEC specifically, they think blockchain is just cryptocurrencies, but it's way more than just cryptocurrencies, right? And there's people playing around with it right now, like Fidelity, Deloitte. Deloitte is connected with Constellation in several ways, but today also, I think it was today, or is it yesterday? They made an announcement that they're using Hedera's network to validate if people are sole sourcing, like this carbon stuff, because the goal here also with a lot of these governments is going through the Paris Climate Accords, making sure everything is carbon neutral. Obviously, MicroStrategy is bullish on blockchain. Yeah, but you can see here, I mean, there's lots of traditional companies that aren't necessarily Web3 or crypto focused that are trying to push forward the adoption of digital assets.
Yeah, I think the lingo now is like asset tokenization 2.0. But yeah, if we kind of shepherd it back to the idea of on-chain organizations, digital voting, digital governance, digital identity, um, as assets become increasingly tokenized, whether it's like a provenance, a security, an audit trail type of way, a notarization way, or if it's, just adding the metadata of like, a stock into a token, and that equaling the rights and governance of it, or voting rights, you have to have a digital, essentially a DAO or some sort of on-chain level organization. It might be a private chain, or it could be various degrees of requirements and access, but it does have to have a digital governance layer. And just like you see at least within traditional terms of, if you're a large shareholder, you get sent these huge packets of what they're voting on, and you have your rights to vote this or that. Um, I mean, instead of that being paper, you imagine, you kind of like have a specific app that you vote, and then on the back end of it, um, it could be metagraphed for the whole telemetry and archived in that sort of snapshot sense, or various means of doing so. But I mean, we're well aware, at least within the federal space and even the DoD space of the maturity Constellation has had, and compared to other brands. Not the only one, but they're
Yeah.
strong. They're very strong.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like I said, I mean, there's lots of collaboration happening. Constellation's involved in Hedera's DREC Alliance, which is working on asset recovery, which is kind of a big problem because one of the things that's great about blockchain is it's super secure, but that also opens up a separate problem because it's might be a little too secure. So what happens if you lose your wallet or lose your keys, right? I
Right.
mean,
If you
you
lose your
can't, you
phone,
can't,
yeah, if you lose
yeah,
your
you can't,
phone and you don't know your recovery keys, yeah,
yeah. I mean, you can't. I mean, there's no bank of, there's no Constellation physical storefront, and it'd be like, hey, bro, I lost
yeah,
my phone.
I messed up.
Yeah, I messed up. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but this is stuff that's being worked on right now, and we are still at the early stages of it. But this stuff is being used right now, and I think that's uh, needs to be communicated more effectively, and it's something that I hope to be doing more so. In my role as the marketing guy at Stardust, because it's important for people to be aware that these things are happening right now. This isn't like a forward-looking thing. I mean, the National DigiFoundry is happening right now. There is literally on-chain voting happening right now. There's projects being incubated in the National DigiFoundry right now. They're exploring ways to use the asset tokenization right now. Um, so, this isn't like next year, 10 years, like this is happening right now. And yeah, all of that stuff that I just mentioned is happening on Constellation, but they're not the only one. Uh, Dfinity, Internet Computer, they just started a relationship with the UN to explore ways to open up stuff to these small and medium-sized businesses that I was talking about earlier, because they're kind of like the underserved people. But not only that, but small to medium-sized businesses actually make up the lion's share of the global GDP. So, I just want people to be aware that these things are happening, right now. And I guess as we round out the space, you've got this North American Blockchain Summit up. Yeah, you can maybe highlight that as we round down the space, and then how people can get involved, and then those people that are listening in Texas, maybe how they can get involved in some of the things that you're doing.
Yeah, yeah, certainly. Yeah, so I wanted to pull this up because the North American Blockchain Summit, which is hosted by the Texas Blockchain Council, uh, is a very awesome event and conference that brings together tons of industry leaders and the leading minds within blockchain. So, last year was like 4 U.S. senators, 2 presidential candidates, RFK, Vivek. So certainly make some effort. If you're in Texas or you have a strong Web3 organization, make sure you get your tickets. They're still doing early bird tickets. Get involved, show out, and make your presence known and kind of learn what's going on, because there's a lot of important things that has to happen with the community and industry coming together and knowledge sharing alike. And that always happens best in person. So make sure you kind of check it out here. For those of you that want to get more involved with, Texas-based blockchain work, obviously join the Texas Blockchain Council. I don't have their site pulled up, but they have various degrees of membership. And then for Texas cities, whichever Texas city you're in, there's different um, communities for each city. So we have Fort Worth, Texas.city here. You could feel free to reach out with me directly, or kind of get involved with our chats here as kind of we scale and organize. There's ATX DAO. There's a H-Town DAO. So there's a Houston. There's DTX DAO and Collective that we also work very closely with, and we're building too. And yeah, just don't be shy. Get involved with your communities, and be motivated. If there's not even one, feel free to start getting people together and learn how to run these events, build them. And if you have more technical skills in building websites or blockchain based development, really flex that muscle, or use this as an opportunity to build it. Innovation's key, so just do your part. That's all I got.
Well, I mean, that was a lot. And I appreciate your time here. And I really am looking forward also to Monday, the hackathon, because maybe some of these things that we've talked about already, somebody will explore these use cases and put it on chain. So for those of you who don't know, Constellation has this hackathon that's going to kick off Monday on the 15th, and it's going to be huge. IBM is partnering, Panasonic is partnering this, Simba is partnering this, and National DigiFoundry is partnering this, and I think I don't know who else is. I'm going to stop right there because I think some more stuff will actually be announced the day of the kickoff, but it's a big deal, and there's going to be big judges. David Beck of the United States Space Force, give you guys some alpha there. So he's actually one of the judges for this. Right. So that just kind of shows the level of validation and participation in this network. So it'll be exciting to see as this develops out. It's an 8-week thing. There's $100,000 in prizes up for grabs. So it's going to be exciting to watch that. And I hope tons of people participate. There's already an early bird sign up that went out. The Stardust Collective started putting that out, and I think the last numbers when I looked at it the other day, it was like around 120 people have already registered. So that's pre-registered for the hackathon thing, And remember, all it's going to take is one app, like one killer app. So that one killer app could actually already be in one of those 120 plus people that have registered for the hackathon. So it's going to be great. Look forward to seeing everybody, and hope you enjoy your weekend. And again, Tabalo, thanks for your time. Always appreciate your insights, and look forward to doing this again with you sometime.
Yeah, thank you. Have a blessed weekend, everybody.
And